The first time I saw her that week, I was leaning against the counter at Harper's Cafe, waiting for my coffee. Same time as always, same quiet hum of the espresso machine, same rain tapping at the windows. I wasn't supposed to be there that morning. I'd forgotten to buy beans for my French press. But when the bell over the door chimed and she walked in, umbrella dripping at her side, I didn't mind the detour. She spotted me before she even reached the counter. "Morning," she said, voice soft like she'd been up for hours. I nodded back, tried not to stare at the way her hair stuck slightly to her cheek from the rain. "You're earlier than usual," I said. She tilted her head. "You notice that?" I shrugged, hoping it came off casual. "Guess I do." It was easy with her, not loud, not rushed. We never ran out of things to say, but we also didn't force it. She ordered her coffee, black, no sugar, and leaned against the counter next to me. We stood there, not touching, but close enough to feel the faint warmth between us. "Your friend's not with you?" I asked, meaning her son. She shook her head. "He's still asleep. College kids." Her smile was quick, but her eyes lingered on mine for a second longer than necessary. The barista called my name, and I reached for my cup. My hand brushed the side of hers, not on purpose, but not entirely by accident either. She didn't pull away. "Always running into you lately," she said as she picked up her drink. I smiled. "That's not an accident." She laughed, quiet but real, like it surprised her. Then she tapped the lid of her cup with her fingertip and said, "You always show up at the right time." I didn't know if she meant it as a joke, but I felt it like a line that had been waiting for the air. We stepped outside together. The rain had slowed, leaving that damp smell that clings to brick and pavement. I adjusted my hood, she didn't bother with hers. The street was quiet, the way it gets when the city hasn't quite woken up yet. "You heading home?" she asked. "Yeah. You?" "Grocery store. Forgot milk." We stopped at the corner where our paths split. She hesitated, like she was about to say something else, but instead she just gave me that small, almost private smile she had. The kind that made you think you were the only one she gave it to. I watched her walk away, her umbrella swinging at her side, rainwater dripping off its edge. When I got home, I set my coffee on the table and saw my phone light up. One unread message. "You around later? Got something for you." No name, but I didn't need one. I sat there, coffee cooling in my hand, thinking about how I'd answer. By the time I knocked on her door that evening, the rain had started again, thin, needling drops that clung to my jacket. She opened the door with a half-smile. "Thought you might bail," she said. I held up the thermos she'd lent me last winter. "Couldn't exactly keep this forever." Her kitchen was warm in that way you don't notice until you've been cold for hours. A low lamp over the counter, the faint smell of cinnamon and something floral, maybe her hand cream. She set the thermos on the counter without looking at it. "Tea?" she asked. "Sure." We stood side by side at the stove, the kettle hissing between us. She reached for the mugs, chipped white ceramic, both of them, and said, almost offhand, "You know, I bought that thermos when my son was in middle school. For soccer tournaments." I tried to picture her on the sidelines, bundled in a coat, shouting encouragement. "You still go to his games?" I asked. She shook her head. "He doesn't play anymore. Doesn't really talk to me much, either." It was said lightly, but the way she stirred the tea, slow, staring into the steam, made it feel heavier. I wanted to say something to make it better, but all I managed was, "He'll come around." She handed me a mug, her fingers brushing mine in the exchange. "You sound sure." "I guess I like to think people do." We moved to the small table near the window. The rain blurred the streetlights outside, turning them into soft halos. She cupped her mug with both hands. "You're a strange one," she said, eyes flicking up at me. How so? You notice things. Most people your age, they don't. I laughed quietly. I don't know if that's a compliment. It is. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I watched the way she turned her mug slowly in her hands, the faint crease between her brows. I knew the rules. She was my friend's mom, at least on paper. She had a life I wasn't part of. I was supposed to keep it that way. But the way the room felt, warm, hushed, the rest of the world sealed outside, made it too easy to imagine staying. I wondered if she was thinking the same thing. When the tea was almost gone, she stood and reached for my mug. As she passed behind me, her hand rested lightly on my shoulder. Just a second, long enough to notice, short enough to pretend it wasn't anything. But I felt it in the pit of my stomach. I don't know why that moment stayed with me, maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. I wasn't expecting to see her at the market. It was late, near closing, most of the aisles half empty. She was in the produce section, frowning at a pile of bruised apples. "You're picky," I said, stopping beside her. She glanced up, smiled faintly. "I don't like wasting money on something I won't eat." We ended up walking the aisles together, both pretending it wasn't unusual. She asked if I still lived alone. I asked if she still worked weekends. Each answer was short, but the space between them wasn't empty. At the checkout, she offered me a ride home. "It's raining again, and your hood doesn't count," so I followed her to the car. Her dashboard smelled faintly of her perfume. A scarf was draped over the passenger seat. I moved it, folded it without thinking. She noticed. The drive was short, too short. She parked in front of my building but didn't unlock the doors right away. Rain tapped against the windshield, soft and irregular. "You've got groceries in the back," she said. "I can grab them." "No, I'll help." In my apartment, the air felt cooler than it should. She set the bags on the counter, glanced around, not nosy, just curious. "You don't have much here," she said. "Not much to need." She stood there, her hand resting on the counter, eyes catching mine for a second too long. I don't know who moved first, maybe we both did. Just a step, just enough to feel the warmth of her standing close. Her voice was quiet. "You shouldn't," she didn't finish. Footsteps sounded in the hallway outside, a door closing, someone laughing. She stepped back, almost imperceptibly. Picked up the empty grocery bag, smoothed it out. "Anyway," she said, "I should get going." I followed her to the door, wanting to say something, anything, that would make her stay. But when she turned back, we both hesitated. For a heartbeat, I thought she might reach for me. Or I might reach for her. But the moment folded in on itself. She smiled, small, knowing, and left. I stood there, the rain still on my jacket, the room smelling faintly of her scarf. We ran into each other again on the path by the river. She said she walked there most evenings when the weather was good. I told her I didn't usually come this way, which was true, but I didn't tell her I'd hoped I might see her. We walked side by side. Not touching. Not quite relaxed, either. She asked about my week, then listened, really listened, while I talked about work. No interruptions, no half-distracted nodding. Just her eyes on mine, like the rest of the world could wait. Somewhere between the old stone bridge and the bench under the elm tree, the conversation shifted. She mentioned she'd been thinking about moving. Said it like she was testing the sound of it out loud. "You'd leave?" I asked. She shrugged, but it was tight, not casual. "Sometimes I think it'd be easier. New city. No history." It landed harder than she probably meant it to. The idea of her somewhere else, someone else walking beside her like this, made something in my chest go sharp. I stopped walking. "Why would you want to start over?" She glanced away, toward the water. "Maybe because I keep noticing things I shouldn't. The pause after that wasn't empty. It was a line neither of us crossed, though we were already standing on it. You mean? I started, but my voice faltered. Her hands were in her coat pockets, shoulders slightly drawn in. You know what I mean. The air between us shifted, not warmer, not colder, just more aware. I sat on the bench. She sat beside me, close enough that her coat brushed mine when she moved. We didn't look at each other right away. I stared at the river. She stared at her hands. You think this is wrong? I asked finally. Her answer was barely above the sound of the water. I think it's dangerous. There was a long stretch where neither of us spoke. She traced the seam of her glove with her thumb. I kept imagining her taking it off, her hand finding mine. You could make it stop, I said. She looked at me then, really looked, no half-smile to hide behind. Could I? The question hung there, heavier than anything either of us had said. I opened my mouth, but I didn't have the answer. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. She was coming out of her building, hair pulled back, keys in hand. No smile, no pause. Hey, I said. She hesitated, just for a second, then kept walking toward her car. I'm late for something, she said over her shoulder. No invite. No small talk. I stood there for a while after she drove off, hands shoved deep in my jacket pockets. For the next week, I didn't see her at all. Not at the cafe, not on the river path, not even in the lobby where our mailboxes faced each other. It was as if she'd slipped into a parallel version of the neighborhood where I didn't exist. When I finally caught sight of her, it was from a distance, at the grocery store again. She wasn't alone. A man about her age was pushing the cart, leaning close to say something that made her laugh. She didn't see me. I walked out without buying anything. That night, I almost texted her. My thumb hovered over the keyboard while I sat on the edge of my bed. Hey, haven't seen you around. Deleted it. Did I do something? Deleted that too. 2 days later, she sent me a short message, busy week. Hope you're well. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. The following Sunday, I passed her son in the hallway. He gave me a quick nod, earbuds in. We'd never been close, but something about the way he didn't even slow down made my chest tighten. It occurred to me then, maybe she wasn't just pulling away from me. Maybe she was trying to repair something else. Something I wasn't supposed to be part of. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. That evening, I walked to her building. Stood outside her door, listening to the faint clink of dishes inside. I could have knocked. Could have said I'm still here. Instead, I turned and walked back down the hall. It was late when she knocked. I almost didn't answer. She stood there in her coat, eyes tired, hair loose in a way I hadn't seen before. Sorry, she said. I shouldn't be here. I stepped aside anyway. She walked in, hands in her pockets, looking around like she was making sure the place was still the same. You've been quiet, I said. She nodded. I thought it'd be easier. Not seeing you. Was it? Her mouth tilted, not quite a smile. No, we ended up in the kitchen, leaning against opposite counters. The only sound was the low hum of the fridge. I saw you, I said. At the store. With someone. She looked down at the floor. An old friend. Nothing more. It was almost a relief, and almost worse. I didn't know where we stood, I said. You know where we stand, she replied, voice quiet but steady. You're younger. My son's friend. This isn't, she stopped herself. Isn't allowed? I asked. She shook her head. Isn't smart. We just stood there, neither moving. My hands gripped the counter edge until my knuckles ached. You could have just said you didn't want this, I said. Her eyes flicked up, sharp. Don't think I haven't wanted this. That's the problem. The air felt heavy between us, like the room was holding its breath. What happens if we stop pretending? I asked. She exhaled slowly, a sound between a sigh and a laugh. Then I lose more than I can get back. Silence again. She rubbed her hands together, like they were cold. I missed talking to you, she said finally. More than I thought I would. I took a step closer. She didn't move back. Her coat brushed my arm, soft and warm from the night air. Her hand found mine, just a brief touch, fingertips against my palm. Not holding, not quite letting go. Okay, she whispered, almost like she was answering a question I hadn't asked out loud. It wasn't a promise. But it was something. Not all at once, but we found our way back to something steady. We don't call it anything. We don't need to. Some mornings, I still see her at Harper's Cafe, 8:47 a.m., like clockwork now. She orders black coffee, no sugar. I still tease her about it. She still ignores the joke and hands me the cup while it's too hot to hold. We walk sometimes, by the river. The bench under the elm is ours in a quiet way, nobody else would guess, but we always sit in the same spots. She still mentions moving now and then, but the way she says it has changed. Like she knows she won't. I keep the thermos she lent me on top of my fridge. We don't talk about giving it back anymore. Her son knows I stop by sometimes. We keep it easy, polite, surface level. Maybe he suspects more, maybe not. That's between him and time. One Sunday, she came over with tea instead of coffee. Said she'd found a blend she liked and wanted to share it. We sat at the kitchen table, rain moving down the window in slow threads, steam curling from our mugs. No rush to talk. No need to fill the silence. There's still risk in it, we both know. But the edges don't feel as sharp now. We've made space for each other in ways that feel possible. Last week, we passed each other on the sidewalk without stopping. Just a quick glance, a small smile. And I realized, it's enough. That knowing. That shared history in the smallest gestures. Tonight, as she's leaving my place, she pauses at the door. No words, just her hand resting lightly on mine for that same brief second it did months ago in her kitchen. Only this time, she doesn't let go right away. And I think, maybe this is what it looks like when you don't need the rest of the world to understand. 4.